Hello, this is Clarence Moye with Awards Daily here with Lee Eisenberg, the executive producer and showrunner of Apple TV Plus's new limited series, Lessons in Chemistry. Lee, it's fantastic to meet you.
Nice to meet you too.
So I've been a huge fan of the things that you have worked on from The Office and then, of course, Jury Duty earlier in the year. So congratulations on that. I love to see
Thank you.
small, I would even call that an independent comedy, right? Because it didn't come from a big streamer. I mean, it's something that people found by discovery, and there's word of mouth behind it, and of course it got these Emmy nominations, which must be extremely rewarding for you.
It was incredible. I mean, we worked on Jury Duty. I think we sold it right before the pandemic,
Mm.
and so to watch something like that, slowly kind of built word of mouth, and even when the trailer came out, I started getting emails and texts, and then the first weekend it launched, uh, it just exploded. I mean, I've never really gotten a response like that before on anything, and it was so exciting and so surprising. And it was
Mm.
it reminded me really of the early days of The Office. I started on The Office the first episode of season 2, so the show had done 6 episodes at that point, and I just remember it was a show that people were talking about. It felt like it was in the zeitgeist, and Jury Duty had that same kind of energy where people had their favorite characters, and it's different now with TikTok and Instagram and
Mm.
social media and Twitter and all just people quoting lines and memes and all the sorts of things that the young people do that I don't understand. Was very exciting.
I remember watching that second season episode of The Office, the Christmas episode where they had the potluck or the Yankee swap, or I think that's what it was
Yeah.
called, the Yankee swap. And Michael goes, "I got Ryan an iPod." And I remember watching that on a video iPod and thinking I was the shit because I was watching this on a tiny screen.
The video iPod really, the Office had all these lucky accidents. I mean, Steve Carell became a movie star from 40-Year-Old Virgin. Um, at the beginning, the summer leading up into season 2 of the show. And then that was a huge thing. And then the video iPod came out, right around the time that we did it. And it was all of a sudden, The Office is one of the only shows I think you could get or download or however it worked at the time.
Right.
And so we shot to the top of the charts. And so everyone was kind of like, oh my God, The Office is this thing. And it was just a confluence of the on the kind of the creative side from Greg Daniels on down, and then on just the timing of Steve and the video iPod really, helped make the show what it is today.
It's amazing. So now you're back with an Apple TV Plus show, Lessons in Chemistry, based on the novel by Bonnie Garmus, which I have
Yeah.
read. So let's start with how did Lessons in Chemistry come to you as a project?
Well, it's a strange one. My wife, who's a journalist, and much smarter and more well read than I am, was reading the book and was kind of reading me passages of it, and not doing any spoilers, but just kind of, she was so excited by it and said, "This is a TV series," and she said, "You need to read it." And so I dropped whatever it was that I was reading at the time and just started and devoured it. I couldn't get enough of it, and the way the dialogue exploded off the page and the twists and turns of the story, I was completely surprised. And I pride myself as a writer that I can kind of see where things are headed. And I just thought the character of Elizabeth Zott was so singular. I was rooting for her. I felt so much empathy for her. I thought she was slyly funny. She hit on so many different kind of things for me. And I have a deal at Apple, but I cold called them and just said, "I'm reading this book. I'm obsessed with it. If there's anything I can do on it, please let me know." And the timing just worked out where they were looking for a writer, and they said, "Yeah, okay, well, we're talking to a few people, but we'd love to put you in touch with Brie Larson." And within a few days, I was on the phone with Brie Larson, and who just coincidentally texted me that her new dog, by the way, whose name is 630, had his first day of school. Literally, just a text popped up. But anyway, so I got on with Brie, and we just hit it off. And I think all of the moments from the book that I loved resonated so much for her. We talked about tone, and we just really connected, and we've become really close friends. And we were off to the races. We just kind of hit the ground running, and off we went.
So this is your, I believe that I'd read this is your first adaptation that you've taken on, that you've always done
That's
something
right.
from scratch. So how is that creative process different for you, or how was it different from you from working something without a previous source material?
Well, I mean, we really treated the book like a Bible in the writers' room. We were constantly referencing it. We were pulling, lines of dialogue. We were mining it for every story turn that we could. And then, I thought there were opportunities. I love the book. It's one of my favorite books that I've ever read. But I thought there were opportunities where, in this different medium, there were things that I wanted to explore.
Mm-hmm.
So, there's a paragraph in the book that I turned into an episode. There's, a line referencing a kind of a flashback that I turned into a series of flashbacks that, really informed a character's backstory. And so, you know, knowing kind of what the building blocks were of the project from the beginning definitely was easier. And then making sure that you were hitting all these themes and all these plot points and all these amazing characters that Bonnie Garmus had created in her book, finding ways of doing that efficiently, finding ways of, not making it an adaptation. A great adaptation should kind of live on its own, but also feel spiritually, completely in line with the original source material. That was where the challenge was. It was really filling in the pieces, and there was a fair amount of invention as well.
Before I continue, I have to say I noticed you're injured. So am I.
Yeah.
We're injury buddies.
Whoa. I burned myself stupidly making eggs for my 2-year-old daughter. So not the most glamorous of injuries.
Well, I can top you on that one. I tripped and fell through a window.
Oh my God. Oh my God.
Stitches on my ear and hands.
Oh my God. Oh, sorry.
I'm good though. It was a couple of weeks ago. I'm healing up.
Okay.
So
yeah.
Talking about those, you're staying thematically close to the source material and to Bonnie Garmus's book, and I know she worked on this project as well. But there are some notable differences, in some small things from how Mrs. Frask's story is handled, and I'm hoping that our audience has read the book, and then major changes in the character of Harriet Sloan. Talk to me about making that, I want to say kind of spoiler free, but talk to me about making that shift in Harriet's character.
Sure. So one of the themes that we were talking about in the writer's room that really emerged from the book was this idea of surprise and the unexpected, and letting in, this idea of letting in outside variables. And Elizabeth, when we find her in the story, has real walls up, and as the series goes on, you understand why those walls have been put up there, and it's really for protection. And when you have walls and you don't allow other people in, these contaminants, these outside variables, the way that you want to avoid when you're doing an experiment in a chemistry lab, you don't have heartache, you don't have grief, you don't have loss. When you kind of eliminate, other people from your life, the flip side of that coin is you lose the opportunity to fall in love. You lose friendships. You lose connection. You lose the opportunity to become a parent. And so much of Elizabeth's journey is one of discovery, where she's kind of on the self-protective path, and then life goes in a way that she didn't plan on, and it's in those kind of surprises that life exists, and being open to that. And so it's a long way of saying that when it came to Harriet and the casting of Aja Naomi King, we were considering Aja for a totally different role, and we fell in love with her as an actress, and we hadn't yet cast Harriet. And we started talking about, well, we could cast Aja in this other role, find a Harriet, and then we'd have these two people that would be competing for screen time and for script pages, and really, what is that story that we want to tell? And we started thinking about the journey of Elizabeth Zott, who was a white woman, pushing up against the patriarchy, pushing up against sexism in these chemical labs, and ultimately finding a voice for herself at Separate Six, and really giving a voice to her audience, and kind of seeing the best in these women, and giving them the opportunity to rise up and see the best in themselves. And so as we started talking about that, we said, well, what if during that time, during the 1950s and 60s, who else was being oppressed? And we started looking into the Sugar Hill neighborhood in LA, where it was a predominantly upper middle class Black neighborhood, lots of lawyers and doctors and some of the biggest entertainers of our time. And they were in a fight for survival because they were trying to build the 10 freeway through their backyard. And we thought, what an interesting parallel to Elizabeth's story, and to see that story told through the eyes of a Black woman who's a lawyer who lives in that neighborhood, who is fighting for survival and finds friendship with Elizabeth, but the two of them challenging one another, was an interesting dynamic that we wanted to explore. And as you get deeper into the show, you see white privilege, and then you see that Elizabeth, who's a hero and our heroine in the story, and accomplishing so much and breaking down these walls and breaking down these barriers, well, she's only doing it to a certain extent. And how does she and Harriet see the world in a slightly different way? And Harriet basically says to her, you have a platform. What do you do with that platform?
Right.
And that challenge of Elizabeth's worldview was something that we really wanted to explore.
Yeah, absolutely. And it was a shift, and it wasn't something that I was necessarily, as a fan of the book, ready for. But you started to really, let go of embrace the change, embrace, because you obviously can't, I think it would be irresponsible to set a series in this era and not kind of reflect on what's going on at the culture at that time. I mean, yes, you're focusing on women and women's rights and putting women first, but there's also a lot, it's the beginning of the 60s. It's, there's all kinds of social upheaval coming.
To us, it felt like a real opportunity. And, again, it came from creative discussions we had in the writer's room, and finding the person that we couldn't imagine not giving as many lines to as possible. And so that was kind of our guiding light with that choice.
So when I was reading the book, I have to admit, Brie Larson was not the first person I thought of for Elizabeth Zott. I had another actress who I won't name, but I had somebody else in mind. And then, but when I watched the show, I said, yeah, this is absolutely perfect for her. Talk to me about working with her to find that character, to build, that story and that trajectory for Elizabeth Zott.
I mean, Brie, unsurprisingly, as an Oscar winner, just every day delivered and delivered and delivered. And we set out to make an incredibly ambitious show that, is about a world-class scientist and a incredibly accomplished chef, and someone who becomes a very competent rower. And, we would give Brie, a page-long, scientific, thesis or science jargon monologue that she would just knock out of the park. And then she would have to look like she knows how to run a kitchen, and dicing and slicing, and it all needed to fall, flambeing, and all that needs to fall into her shoulders. And then we said, oh, and by the way, we've decided to make sure that we really hit the rowing aspect that's in the book. And she just, from that kind of core competency level, she hit it out of the park. And then what Brie is so adept at as an actress is she is able to be hilarious. She is able to be so vulnerable, and you feel so much for her. She's able to speak truth to power. She's able to stand up to bullies, and all of those. Elizabeth Zott has to touch on so many different kind of energies as a character, and sometimes from scene to scene. And she deals with a tremendous heartache. She becomes a mother. There's so many aspects, and kind of seminal life moments that we thrust her into. And she just said every moment she just stepped up, and I'm mesmerized by her performance.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, she's fantastic throughout the whole show, but I'm particularly reminiscing about the scene. And again, I don't want to give any spoilers away, but there's a scene that takes place at a freeway, where there's a protest at a freeway, and it obviously turns dark. and so much of it is reflected from her, her reactions to that scene, and she just carries that off so beautifully. I mean, I don't think she has any dialogue at that moment, but she doesn't need it. It's in her eyes, it's in her face, it's in her expressions, it's in how she witnesses what's going on there. It's an incredibly powerful moment.
We very specifically, that is not her scene, and
Right.
there's a tremendous amount of confidence that to be an actress of her caliber and say, yes, I want to be the fourth most relevant person in the scene,
Right.
and I don't want any lines of dialogue, but I will deliver you a performance that you will reference now. I mean, I feel so much for her. I feel so much for the other characters in that scene, and her not being there would have been such an absence, both from a storytelling perspective and from a performance standpoint. But what she's able to accomplish just in looks is amazing.
So I want to talk about Supper at Six for a little bit. A lot of that is directly taken from the novel, but I have to wonder: did you take any inspiration from shows of that era? Maybe Julia Child. Did Julia Child come up in the writing room when you were figuring out how Supper at Six would run, and kind of what what the operations behind the camera would look like, as well as in front of the camera?
We really approached it as writers. We really approached it using the novel as the source material and mining every little bit that we could. And then we also have the benefit of working in Hollywood, so we knew we knew what the asshole producer sounds like. We knew what the kindly producer sounds like. We knew what the different departments did, and so a lot of that was really from our own experience. We did watch some Julia Child. That was really the only reference that we had for that time period. And then our production designers and costume designers, the look of Supper at Six is really in their hands, and they over delivered at every turn. And that, to the color of that set and her costumes and the usability and non-usability of that kitchen were heavily debated, and that was something we had a lot of fun with.
Yeah, absolutely. The Here at Awards Daily, we have people that specialize in different things: production design, costumes, that kind of thing. Just where their interests gravitate. And I called a friend of mine who writes for the site, and I said, "You're going to be fed with lessons in chemistry, because its costumes
Yeah,
are fantastic and the production design is outstanding. I mean, it's
it's
absolutely
outstanding.
gorgeous."
The level of research and care that every department put into the show. I've really never worked on a show where I felt such. I think everyone was so reverential of the source material, and people really connected on a personal level. It's not You're not adapting, kind of a page turner where the president's daughter is kidnapped, and there's which I love,
Right.
by the way. Not that people are kidnapped, but like those kind of thrillers. This is really a story that's so character driven, and I think Elizabeth Zott speaks to so many people that the level of effort and intention and texture that all of these departments were pouring into it, and working weekends and nights, and the scripts were incredibly ambitious, and they at every turn they just elevated the material so much.
Last question for you, and it kind of feeds into what you were just talking about. So for those who have not read the novel and they decide to take on this limited series, what do you hope people take away from it?
I think it's a story that really captures humanity. It's the full breadth of the human experience. There's love, there's loss, there's grief, there's friendship. It's really about finding your community. The name of the novel and the series obviously is Lessons in Chemistry, and it's a play on words. It is lessons in chemistry. She's a chemist. Her love interest in the show, Calvin Evans, is a chemist, and the two of them fall in love over this passion for science and really trying to understand the origins of life. But it's so much more than that. It's really about chemistry in its core sense, and chemistry is about bonds and building connections. And that's what life is. It's not simply DNA and ionic bonds, coming together. You can see my science knowledge as I talk about ionic bonds. That's the extent of it. But uh,
You're impressing.
it's about it's about the surprise relationships that you find, and the people that you lean on, and the people that lean on you, and that is something that really as I was making the show, my daughter was turning 1, and Sarah Dina Smith, who directs the first 2 episodes, also had a 1-year-old, and we talked so much about parenting and about building your village and building your community. And that really that's kind of the trajectory of the character. She starts off completely alone in the world, and then over the course of 8 episodes, you see all these people that she's touched and have touched her.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, Lee, those are all the questions I have for you. Thank you so much for the time. Congratulations on the project, and I can't wait to talk more about it over the rest of the award season.
I can't wait.
Take care.
Those are great questions. Thanks so much. All right, bye, Clarence.
Bye-bye.
Bye.